And it looks like we're live. So welcome everybody. Welcome to the second part of our three-part series on compensation. I'm very excited to be having this conversation with these two gents today, primarily because we've already had a ton of conversation about this already, and it's such an interesting topic. It is about the impact of AI on compensation. And there's a number of different angles and perspectives that we're going to use to try and understand this topic. Obviously, this has been the last 12 months has been the year of AI, the mainstreaming of generative artificial intelligence into the public consciousness. Every company is interested in trying to move into AI enablement. What is that doing to salaries? What is that doing to the sort of skills that we're prioritizing? What is it doing to our capability of calculating the number when it comes down to what we should be paying people? So this is the topic that we're going to be talking as sort of the topic of the conversation today, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you with us. Let's do some intros real quick. Of course, we have Virgile. Virgile, would you like to introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do? Maybe tell us a little bit about Figures whilst you're at it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Virgil. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Figures that I created 3 years ago after 11 years working in human resources. And what do we do with Figures? Well, I created Figures to try to create the compensation management product I would have loved to have when I was a compensation and benefits and HR person out there. So we're doing basically what we do. We do benchmarking. We aggregate market data coming from our clients to provide the market data. And we also help them with compensation management, creating, updating, and sharing salary ranges, and pretty damn soon, quite cool compensation reviews, like not those Excel-based compensation reviews like I've run all my life. This is what we do.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's a wonderful story, by the way. Rare to see like one of our community to actually launch a product on the tech space and actually have great success with it. So big fan of Figures. I think this category of compensation tech is one of the big winners of the last several years. I think it will be a mandatory tool that people need to be using because we're obviously moving away from hiring manager discretion, let's say. As to who gets paid what. I think that's the direction of travel that we're going to. So do check out Figures if you do not have a solution. And we have Arif Ender here with us as well. Arif, wonderful to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do?
Sure. My name is Arif Ender. I'm currently in transition between two jobs, but I've been in the tech industry for now roughly to 7 years, and it's going to be almost finishing my 2 decades in reward space. So currently I'm with Meta and responsible for the non-tech compensation for the EMEA region. Yeah, so I'll be actually, supporting you in this very interesting subject and topic. So it's very dear to our heart anyway these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone cares about it because, it's not only us as recruiters, as representatives of companies, of course, but also we're individuals that need to know what the comp level is for us as well. So, folks, just a quick one on the housekeeping. I nearly forgot about this, but this is kind of a newish tool for a lot of people. It looks really cool, but it may be unfamiliar with people who are using it. So just want to let you know there should be a sidebar on everyone's screen. You can see chat, you can see polls, you can see those types of things. Please make yourself feel free to interact with us on chat. We're going to be monitoring that. If you have any kind of questions or anything that you want to discuss or throw at any of us, put it into the chat and we'll try and surface those questions out and try and make this an interactive session as much as possible. Okay, let's kick off with the first one. The headline that I saw, I don't know whether you guys saw it, but Netflix came out with an AI-related job that they had advertised for. The bottom line was 300,000 US per annum, up to 900,000 US per annum. And everyone's like going, what? What's going on here? Crazy talk. So that's the first topic of conversation here. Has AI become such a premium now for some companies that we're getting back to the era of throwing crazy salaries at like elite expertise. I'm not talking about people who know a bit about ChatGPT. I'm talking about individuals that, know how to put together a large language model, let's say, people who understand how to build that internal capacity. Presumably Netflix are interested in building out their own proprietary systems. They needed someone in and needed skills in to do that. They're throwing nearly $1 million salary at this at a time when you think, recessionary experience, people cutting down. So AI expertise at the very top level. Are you seeing sort of inflated demand and inflated compensation for these? Go to you first, Virgil, seeing as you might have some data on this. Have you actually found anything to confirm that kind of anecdote?
So first of all, funny thing about Netflix sharing a $3,000 to $900,000 of salary range when it's a side topic on pay transparency compliance, but Netflix is very funny when it comes to showing salary ranges on job ads. You can check for yourself on the Netflix career page because they have those massive pay ranges.
Massive range.
Yeah, it's always funny to me. Coming back to the topic, yes, this is the same phenomenon that we've seen for other areas such as like 2 years ago, crypto, right? It was a wild west out there. Why? When there's money pouring into all of those AI companies, which have raised an insane amount of money or have an insane amount of money dedicated to AI. So the number one thing they use that money for, yes, they need data centers and stuff like that, but mostly talent. So there's a huge talent war on AI and like those top experts that can do that. And this is absolutely crazy. Like Netflix, and I haven't seen that job, but I've seen the average packages. But OpenAI, I'm not sure if you've seen the average packages sent out by OpenAI to like AI specialists. Mind-boggling. So yes, this is the Wild West. This is a new Wild West. It's a new thing, and anyone who can actually do some real AI, non-ChatGPT, is bound to have an insane market value at the moment.
Yeah. So basically, very interesting, Virgil. You mentioned the investment and where that's going. I don't know whether anybody saw or is tracking where VC investment is going, but obviously, like huge amounts have just like shifted directly into AI related startups, and everyone who's a non-AI startup is literally, there's nothing going. So all of that money is basically translating directly into excess compensation. And as far as if you're an AI expert, it's like back in 2021, right?
More, it's more 2021 on steroids for AI at the moment. It's crazy.
Go to you on this, Arif. Have you seen sort of the AI category of skills like break compensation policy? Because sometimes you set up a compensation policy, there's leveling and all this type of stuff, and then suddenly something happens in the market that makes everyone excited. All of this investment money surges towards it. You're suddenly competing. What you had preset previously to all of this no longer is competitive. You have to say, we have to carve out a caveat for AI expertise. We're going to break out from the leveling and from the compensation policy we've had. Have you seen this, Arif, or have companies simply built in that elasticity in advance?
So basically, we just need to kind of like track back a little bit. Basically AI is just not a hype of the last maybe 1, maybe 2 years. Basically, a lot of the companies in the back end, maybe in some cases in stealth mode, was like working on this like for more than like 6-7 years, maybe. Like if you really go back to AI 1.0, not maybe the generative AI version, I would say that maybe it's the 4th version, more or less, if you think about from the technology perspective. So it was always like, the skill set was developing, but there was no market data, or there was no specific market for an artificial intelligence or machine learning specific software engineers. So you would also see in the major surveys for compensation experts, these kind of roles also emerged in the surveys as a benchmark role, I would say in the last 3 years or so. And it was always the software engineer hub. And if you really track back, I would say 2017 is a good kind of a milestone on this, how software engineering roles skyrocketed. And now it's kind of like maybe settling a little bit. It slowed down. But I just say like a rocket, like the spun-off of his AI ML engineer or research scientist are still going away. And what we are seeing in all the markets, different surveys, and so in the market as well, when it comes to offers, it's not a surprise for me if an AI software engineer or AI engineer, AI specialist is getting at least 20 to 30% premium.
Yeah. I love
And
the
in some
visualize.
cases, I've seen also 60%, but again, it just depends how much the companies need it. Like OpenAI, I will say, I mean, at the end, it's their core job, right?
Yeah, and I love the visualization you pointed out, like the rocket ship of engineers. Everyone who I think a lot of us are familiar with hiring software engineers, vanilla software engineers, if they forgive me for using that phrase. And then it's plateaued somewhat, and it has. I mean, you've just jump onto developer communities and listen to what they're saying, and they're saying, yeah, it's just less demand, there's less this, that, and the other. They have to compromise somewhat, and so it's not going to the level that they were used to. But if you're ML, your AI, it's still shooting forward. And obviously that's going to drive talent towards that space. I'm sure every engineer is like totally interested in trying to get into that and making sure that's where we're at. So that's a really interesting sort of component. So you mentioned a few job titles, actually, Arif. I wonder whether we could just sit with the job titling just a little bit so that we can understand, okay, what are the things that seem to be attracting the inflated salaries? You mentioned there's straight up AI ML engineer, and then there's a research scientist. Like, what are the job titles? Again, Visual, drop in your comments on this as well. Like, what are the job titles should we kind of be aware of when we're thinking about this?
Yeah, well, I think Arif mentioned those. Like, there's like research scientists or AI, like people that have mostly a mathematics background, like in depth, like often PhD. Nearly all of them have PhD, basically. And those guys are like really research scientists. Really, if you see the scale from like going for pure maths to like computer science, on one hand, easy way to build it, right? To simplify it, research scientists on one hand, your vanilla software engineers, as you call them, on the other hand. And then in the middle, you have like
all these engineers gonna be DMing me in a second saying you.
I think so. They should. So poor you. So if you're a vanilla engineer, I'm sorry, you're just a vanilla software engineer people. And in the middle sits like ML engineers, which have some enough ML knowledge to implement some of the research output or work on like implementing research output or ML models into actual code, right? So sit a bit in the middle if we simplify it quite a bit. And the premium goes higher as we go towards the research scientists, I'd say.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Folks, just a quick question to the people in the audience. Are you hiring AI ML engineers or research scientists? If so, are you comfortable with the salary levels that your employer is offering? And actually, how did you come up with the salary level? Like, have you understood the market conditions and be able to kind of come up with a competitive number? Or are you finding that actually you're trying to compete with stuff that isn't attractive to the marketplace because they can see other opportunities elsewhere? There's certain segments, AI, ML engineers, and research scientists, I think, are still living this abundance mindset type of worldview. They probably can pick and choose the opportunities as they see fit. So let us know in the chat there, folks, about whether you have any experience of this and what are you seeing in terms of comp. Okay. By the way, just a quick one. In order to find to create a competitive salary, I presume, and this is not me trying to present Figures as an option, but presumably one of the reasons why you might want to use a product like Figures is to understand how to price effectively to be competitive in a market like this, right?
Well, I think it's. I was about to show, and I'm going to show in the chat like some of our market data for people to see compare for themselves, right? Market data comparing machine learning engineer market data versus actually full stack engineer market data. And this is why if you're going out there and you're like,
why don't you share screen? Why don't you share screen Visual?
Okay, I can for sure.
Yeah.
So, and if you're going out there without market data, and you're like assuming before I share the screen, I don't know, I need to hire a machine learning engineer. I have no market data. I'm guessing they're paid higher, and you go into the role being like, okay, maybe it's 10%, maybe 20%. You don't know. And any offer you make, you might look foolish to a candidate because you're like, okay, we're throwing this out there. The candidate will be like, are you serious? You really think this is market rate? This is not insulting and so on. So if you want to be fair and equitable, you need to be able to go to candidates or employees being like, hey, we want to pay median market of the code, median market range, or 70th percentile. And this is the data we're using to make that offer. We think it's a fair offer compared to your value on the market, and this is what we're doing, right? So what we are showing at Figures, what we're doing, I'm show the screen very quick. I hope it won't be too technical for people, but this is our market data interface, right? And what you see in green is like the machine learning market data, and what you see in blue is full stack vanilla software engineer market data.
One sec, visual. We're not. I'm not seeing anything here. I don't know whether anybody else is.
Here we
go. Yeah. We got it.
So in green, you see the salary ranges, market data in France. I've used France, but you can look other data for machine learning engineers. And in blue, you see market data for vanilla software engineers. So you see the market data for the junior, intermediate, and senior levels, right? You see how the premium, the green bar is for machine learning engineers, the blue for full stack engineers. You see the gap in compensation widening as seniority goes up. And you actually see the top end of the market for a vanilla software engineer is barely the market median, or at most the market median for a machine learning engineer, right? And if you don't have access to the data, you can't have access to that.
And to confirm, Vigil, this data is coming from payroll, right? It's payroll data rather than So it's real numbers. Yeah, cool.
Yep, exactly. So that's it. I've sent the link to others to check and won't talk too much about figures, but this is why you need to have actual number to be able to try to pay people equitably.
Yeah.
And if not, it's really tough to make up a sense of what's real market value. But to Arif's point, I'm going to stop talking for a while. It's also data coming from payroll, but the hiring market
it's beyond it.
Maybe ahead of the payroll data, right? So it's on those crazy rocket ship type of trajectory.
And this is not something new. Like, I mean, whenever there is an emerging technology and comes with a new emerging roles, it's always like, first of all, the market kind of sets the rate. It's like a free economy, right? So, I mean, we've seen, even if you like really track back 20 years ago, when there was these IT consultants versus back then, like the ERP consultants, like SAP consultants, you will see like 30-40% premiums. Was crazy out there. And as that technology kind of, saturated, or maybe just went a little bit traditional, it just fell off. Like, we are seeing this all the time. And this is let's say, I don't want to call it as a hype, but for now, it's a hype. It's just very new.
Feel free to call it a hype, Arif. I think that's all good. Say what you mean, man. No, I tell you though, what's interesting is when you have, totally right, whenever there's a new thing, there's this like neophilism, like we're literally very keen to run towards it. I think what's interesting is to see how quickly the market can actually build the skills to supply and kind of moderate the price. Because it could be, let's say, we're still thinking, oh, this person needs to be a PhD. It needs to be, someone with a strong degree of training. It may not be. We may be in a high salary, high inflation, wage sort of inflation scenario for a long while before the new talent actually comes in and draws people in. So, in other words, it may take longer to make an AI or ML engineer or research scientist than it would do a software engineer per se. So perhaps we'll end up seeing boot camps. I don't know whether there's any credibility there, but you remember 10 years ago, there was like a mushroom of boot camps. So let's make a software engineer in 8 weeks and all this type of stuff. So presumably there will be something like that happening with AI and ML. And when that happens, you can understand that, okay, maybe the market has peaked at that point and probably sliding across. Okay. Super, super interesting. Let's look at the second way in which AI is impacting compensation. And here is where I want to look at AI diffused across job types. So the first example was these AI heroes that were just literally the experts. These are people be giving talks and conferences, etc., etc. But of course, AI, one of the reasons why this has been the moment for generative AI is because it's a big democratization wave, like lots of people being able to use it. Now, have we seen any evidence that AI-enabled candidates are being rewarded more in terms of compensation in some way compared to someone who isn't AI-enabled? So, for instance, are we seeing things like people who know how to use ChatGPT and know how to do their various things on consumer level? Are we valuing them? Is that now being expressed in the compensation, or is it too early, or is it too granular and we can't see it? What are your thoughts on that? Virgil, maybe we'll go to you on this.
I have no data backing this up for now. Nothing I've seen. I'm curious to see what Arif has seen there. No data backing this up. And my take is it is being done at a micro level. Like, I know I'm doing it. Like, I know that for some roles, but it's more like a prerequisite for a role. And I don't think it will be long-lasting things for two reasons, right? I think there's going to be more and more tools helping with the adoption of generating AI. In most of the tools we use, Microsoft's on it, Google's on it, so that so it makes it accessible to the vast majority of people. So it won't be such a differentiating criteria, so that's like only 5% of people know how to use it. It'd be accessible to the most people. And I think in the other way around, it'd be more like getting someone that doesn't know how to use a spreadsheet is a major issue. But someone who uses a spreadsheet very well is not getting an instant 10% increase on their salary, right? And I think it'd be more a productivity booster than necessarily something clearly valued as anyone who has ChatGPT experience or expertise will get X% more. It will just help those people be more higher performing and therefore should lead to higher value in terms of cash compensation and promotion velocity and so on.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So basically, it's so ubiquitous that it's hard to describe it as a premium a person can charge anybody to say, I'm good at this, because, you know, it's like saying you're good at a spreadsheet or good at email, which in fact, you know, becomes basically a standard skill for operating in a company that might have some digital outputs, I guess. So very interesting on that. Arif, I guess there's no data on this, but it's just a sense, isn't it? It's like if you're hiring people, you think, okay, would you really hire someone who's completely ignorant right now of ChatGPT or generative AI? Probably that would not be great. Like you'd think if you, let's say a marketing person, you're hiring someone there, you probably want to see, okay, has this person experimented with something, right?
It is like, I mean, I think it's still kind of like in that if you kind of classify it as a soft skill, and I don't think it's gonna be like a hard skill in the very short term that, you know, like you will see like as a basic requirements, you know, somebody needs to use a ChatGPT or, you know, because still it is on an individual level that it just increases the efficiency. So far, we didn't see that you have to know how AI works so you can use the business tools or internal tools or processes, right? I think it's too soon to tell that. But my opinion is, yeah, it will definitely have an impact on what kind of skills are more valuable in the long term. And actually, if you really start looking at in the last 2 years, talents management studies or skills of the future kind of studies or future of work studies, you'll see always this coming up, the business acumen, effective communication, a little bit more than these hard skills, which actually complements the very well and efficient usage of AI. You know, like you just need to know how business works and then really create a good prompt and get the output from the AI will be maybe the next business analyst scope, you know. And obviously on an additional part is obviously AI is very much easier to implement to kind of finish these repetitive, very, you know, administrative tasks. So I will see it will have an impact on that side of the job families, let's say. It will definitely have more impact on disrupting those. But for a kind of a, let's say, a white collar employee, I think it will be more on just maybe a new role will emerge, like, or new skill set will emerge, like prompt engineering. We start even hearing that anyway.
But one take on this, if I may, Hang, I'm going to make an analogy that's going to sound very stupid, but that's a strong conviction of mine. Do you hear any company giving out premiums to people who type super fast on a keyboard? You don't, right? But actually, it's actually a real productivity thing. If I type twice faster than someone else, I get better. But so there's no one giving premium, but the bet here is those that type fast are going to be a bit more productive. And normally, if you're more productive and more performing, you should get promotion faster and more rewards, right? So I think in a way, soon with the democratization of like ChatGPT and generative AI, those that know how to use it won't necessarily get a premium for it, but will have their performance will improve due to that, and they should lead to more better rewards due to that.
Yeah, they'll get a career premium, won't they? So it's not like you won't get it. So you'll get the compensation reward by accelerating your career down the track, but it won't just be an explicit exchange of here's some more money because you know about this toolkit. So I think that's very interesting. I do think that it will probably be like a soft requirement for a lot of companies that are starting to, maybe it's not a bullet point on the thing, but I'd be surprised if that question is not being asked. In fact, wasn't there some research recently? Who is it that did this? It must be one of the interview intelligence companies that did the research where, actually, yeah, it was Screen. I hope you don't mind me dropping their name here. But they did some research just to track what questions were being asked at interview and the rate of change as to which topics were being asked. And both sides, both the candidate and the hiring managers were asking more about AI. And it was trending up like this. So both parties are talking about it. Candidates want to know what the policy is or whether you get access to using these tools, and the employers want to know whether you've already had experience and whether you're up for doing it. So this is a clear trend. I don't think it's controversial. You need to get into it. Everyone needs to do that. Okay, let's have a look at the negative side of this, because we talked about AI enablement being a contributor to career progression and ultimately compensation. But there's a reverse side of this as well, in the sense there are certain jobs that perhaps are like completely exposed to being replaced by AI. Very famously, one of the very earliest controversies on this moment was the IBM CEO, who I think he was caught on an interview, and he said, yeah, we had 7,000 heads, we're not going to hire anymore because we think that we anticipate that generative AI will replace some of that or a great deal of that functionality in 6 to 12 months. And these were back office, HR, in fact, all of these little sort of roles that have a strong administrative type function. Now, again, this may be speculation. It might be we have data on it. So if you have either speculation or data, let's throw it in there. Have you seen like a suppression of compensation for for roles that are highly exposed to AI? In other words, people are not paying to inflation rate. They're looking at it as a devaluation is starting to be expressed in compensation because we anticipate this job to be gone in X amount of time. Any data on this, Virgil? I'm probably not. It's very granular.
But I mean, we have data on the fact that you are mentioning like salaries that are stopping to increase at a crazy rate and are slowing down. I think in tech it's still increasing overall, but at a slower pace than in years past. But in some administrative role and support function, it's actually plateauing, and some roles even decreasing. But is that due to the market environment and just being roles on which there's less pressure on the arrival of AI? I would bet on the former, but that's what you're seeing. We can't say it's like due to AI, and I would be surprised to see it based on AI right now, because I think there's lots of plans out there. I haven't seen many companies like retweaking their org structures instantly to accommodate for AI. So I would think it's just the market conditions slowing down compensation on some of those roles rather than just pure AI.
Yeah, I want to believe it's AI though, Virgil, because that's the narrative I have in my mind.
Yeah, sorry, it's the webinar of today. Of course, it's AI. AI is driving compensation down, and this is what's happening at the moment.
No, but I totally get it. Why don't? And by the way, this is all speculation because it's impossible to do attribution on this. And of course, there's the macro environment. There's all kinds of things. However, probably if you're like doing things like workforce planning, and you're looking into the future 2-3 years down the line, you have to be thinking what jobs are going to be. We're going to shrink this department over time because we don't anticipate loads of people doing it. I'll give you a recruiting example. I know a company that is a big tech company, and it would surprise you because they're like one of the leading efficiency type businesses out there. They still had a massive department of recruitment coordinators in their TA function. So we're talking about 200 people that were doing interviews, scheduling, chasing feedback, stuff like this. We have technology to replace all that. They didn't implement the technology, so they still have this department. Now, obviously, all of those folks, they're going to transition to other jobs, and that department will reduce, and ultimately will disappear. That's inevitable. And I would say that's an example of where technology innovation will be suppressing. You're not going to pay money to hire a recruitment coordinator. Do you know what I mean? It's no longer that valuable a job, given the fact where we're at with regards to tech. So I think it will happen, but again, we can't tease it away from the macro. Arif, I think you're going to say something.
Yeah, I think before going there and like discounting or just maybe cutting some workforce on those kind of tasks and roles, I think just companies are still not ready, for the true digitalization and basically investing in these kind of technologies and resources. Like, again, I really don't want to call it a hype, but because it is right now, and technically it's a hype, and people always just jumping on the ship and they don't know what they are getting into. Like, if the companies are not ready to kind of really embed this, they cannot reflect it into their workforce as well. So, I mean, one example, for instance, is like first and foremost, if you're going to go for some watch outs as well, and probably this is repeated so many times, is the data in, data out, like the quality and quantity of data that is required to have a really solid AI usage and like AI model and its usage is massive. Even the best companies in tech gathering lots of data, it's still like compared to those big data that those LLM models or whatever, like the old Gen AI models need is tiny. Like with, I don't know, 10 offers per month, that's not going to help you to come up with a best offer rate that you can have. So that's why I think it is going to be very soon to tell if companies are ready, to cut off some compensation or decrease it, or just even like, let some roles go. And if that happens, let's say in the short term, I will see you would still need people. And going back to your example, maybe you will need senior recruiting coordinator specialists that can oversight what the AI is doing on the field. Basically people will be more specialized, I think, rather than doing the administrative works, but they still need to kind of know the whole process, programs and stuff in their field. I think that's the shift that I'm anticipating as we go in these kind of jobs.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Arif. And it is the case that change management is always an issue because you've got an existing process. There's a switching cost to the new process that oftentimes you're not prepared to pay because you're not actually, you don't quite understand how much the cost will be. So that's one of the biggest reasons why people don't change, is because you don't know how big a change how big an impact it will have on you, particularly if you're like already at maximum capacity, which all of us seem to be running very, very hard because the market is so tough. I don't see anybody with the 10%, 20% free time to do what they want. It's like everyone is at 120% right now. Very hard to then suddenly change the way you're operating. So I think you're right, Arif. There's going to be that sort of inertia of existing systems, existing processes, resistant to new changes. Probably the change will come from very young or emerging companies that didn't have the legacy, and they won't design in this way. And the big challenge, of course, for anybody with a larger, more mature business is, can you keep pace? Because this is one of the pains of being a more mature company, is that you do have to sometimes pay the switching cost. Otherwise, you'd be outcompeted by more agile players out there. Okay, very, very interesting. There's a really interesting question in the chat, and we're kind of moving towards this now, which is, can we, the fourth way in which we can think about the impact of AI in compensation is, can we use AI to calculate compensation? We've been like, we're kind of seeing the entire history of compensation in crushed into a very short window, aren't we? Like, not so long ago, I would even say 10 years or so ago, the most obvious thing in terms of setting compensation was probably hiring manager discretion within budget, right? Hiring manager has budget, you pay what you want to get your people, and it's like all over the place. And most of us have, really inconsistent salary levels and what have you, based on hiring manager discretion. Then we moved on to more like calculating and trying to figure out, let's be more fair. All the leveling came in and adopting those behaviors. And then it became a little bit more fixed, like from the central top down, here's how you get paid. Now, what happens if you put AI in there? Like, what possibilities could AI give us if you had AI to calculate the compensation? could you, for instance, be more would it increase the variable component of compensation now that you have AI there? So I'm reminded a little bit how Uber used to pay. I think they still do to a large degree. It was like completely variable rate, baseline, however many is just total performance based pay, right? Like, aren't we all interested in like matching performance with pay? Well, okay, is it possible you can use AI to do that in a non-Uberized job or a non-sales job? Thoughts on this? I throw it open to either of you that might have some speculative thoughts here.
I can go if you want, Virgil. So I think, again, just going back to the very traditional school of thought is, compensation is both an art of science. And I think AI still needs time to replace the art side of it. But the science or the math part of it is very easy to replace, obviously. Even you would even tell, Excel might have replaced it already, like 30 years ago. So I think that is where my opinion kind of stands. I think there is still some edge cases, corner cases that still needs an expert inside and involvement, a human mind and experience. And I'm just going back to the major watch out that I'm seeing. There needs to be enough quantity and quantity of data and a high quality of data to do that. And let's see, even the biggest multinationals have up to 50 to 100,000 employees. Is it still kind of enough data, to make really very good prediction and assumptions? I mean, AI expert might answer this. Feels like it still kind of needs a little bit more. But could it come up with some basic adjustments or some ranges? Yeah, definitely yes. So I think it will come up with dynamic new hire salary recommendations. Will be one of the very early and quick wins that we're going to have in compensation. Or could be, again, if somebody is an employee, and it could be also a predictive salary adjustment. I will see that these will be the short-term kind of practices in AI. And when it comes to variable compensation, I think it's the same. The bonus structures or the benefits packages, if you also go on not only just comp, but overall in rewards, they might be more tailored based on the employee needs and data. But again, it all depends on how much data you are collecting.
Before you come in, Vijay, I'll just stay with Arif for the time being, because it occurred to me, obviously working in comp and bends, are you encountering sort of any tooling that you can see useful to your role? I've never worked in comp and bends. In fact, visually you have done, so you know this. Presumably before it was just a calculator, wasn't it? It was Excel and a calculator. It's like there wasn't, in terms of tooling, it was pretty basic. Trying to figure out where market rate, internal rate, that kind of thing. Has there been any interesting innovation that you've spotted that looks like, okay, someone is actually building something that might be useful for me in my job here?
To be honest, I mean, it's just based on my curiosity, not the companies that I worked is officially using them. But what I really benefit, and then I was gonna come to that, like where we can use also, in practice. I believe the most impactful field is gonna be the employee communication and training, for rewards. I think this is a broader topic anyway, but for compensation specialists and experts, this is gonna be the biggest win. And I already done that, like literally just give a really clever prompt to ChatGPT and take it out and put like on I don't know if you're gonna like name those, like there's this video editing or training material editing kind of software, AI enabled software. Put that prompt on that, you automatically come up with an employee communication or training video. That's crazy. You already finished your onboarding on your field for, I don't know, thousands of employees in maybe 15 minutes. Like that was super impressive for me. I was hesitant a little bit going into all these numbers and making predictions yet, just because of the watchouts that I mentioned earlier.
On that note as well, Arif, I can imagine that personalization will become a lot more effective with AI. Because let's not forget that different people have different attitudes to compensation. You have some people that are hyper motivated. They're very, very keen. They're always, every single dollar, every single euro is fought for. Other people a little bit more laissez-faire. They have different sort of commitments or different sort of interests. Perhaps in future, you might get a really responsive and dynamic kind of AI-supported compensation policy where it's really going to deliver the things that you're looking for as an employee, rather than a universalized system which suits one group of people more and doesn't suit another group of people more. Vijay, you've been sort of quiet for a while, so let's bring you in here. What are your thoughts on this AI in compensation calculation? Any tooling, any interesting stuff happening?
Man, plenty of stuff to say. You're going to have to cut me up. On your last point, personalization, I'll say this. I think the ultimate dream when it comes to compensation and benefits is full flexibility. Company being like, hey, this is the package I have for you. You can split it down between base salary, variable pay, potentially equity, potentially benefits, potentially leave days. Up to a certain extent, you can arbitrate between these to fit your desire, your personal situation, your family situation. But I think tooling is the limiting factor there. It's impossible for any payroll specialist to say, okay, Hung, I need to deduct that amount because he chose to have 2 more leave days and he chose a gym policy. Tooling, but I think this is the ultimate vision. So that's on personalization. On your point on tooling using AI, we've been implementing Figures AI for months and a half ago. So we've been working for nearly a year on a model to predict market data in areas where our samples were too low. So we've been implementing this. That's the first value of AI, and we've been working on months on accuracy of this market prediction for areas in which we were telling our clients, sorry, we don't have any data for this role in this location. Now we're like, for some role and location, not everywhere, we feel like we have enough, we feel confident enough in our models, AI models, to generate some prediction. So we've implemented that. But I think the key value is going to be into what you mentioned, is like, and what Arif mentioned, recommending salary packages at higher time and recommending salary increases based on AI. So 2 points on that. First point is, it's going to come from just a technology perspective and a compliance perspective. I've briefly mentioned this at the beginning, but the European Pay Transparency Directive is going to force employers to be a lot more strict on the decisions they make, because those decisions are going to be more and more public. And employers, as part of this directive, are going to be potentially liable for pay discrimination, meaning that any employee suing one of their employers for pay discrimination, in the current state, in most countries, the employee has to come up with proof of pay discrimination, which is super hard. Tomorrow, the employers will have to prove that they have not discriminated against an employee, meaning that for any decision they make when it comes to pay, they're going to have to back it up with, this is what we did. So my take is, most employers will be moving away a lot more from discretionary pay increases because of that, because employers will be like, hey, discretionary pay increase, there's too much liability in that because I could be sued for what was a discretionary argument. This is just discrimination. If I don't have any counter argument, I'm doomed. So I think like AI recommended increases will come because of the technology and compliance push. But as Arif said, right, crap in, crap out, you need to, if you can't feed an algorithm with crappy data. So for example, when it comes to pay increases, if you want to do pay increases based on performance, you need solid performance data. And it's been also, this is an issue for most companies. However, AI is also improving this. I was about to link an article in the chat from Jessica's one, who's creating something amazing called Peerful, which I think is going to be one of the biggest disruptors of the entire industry. Basically using research to improve the way we calibrate performance and assess performance. So if AI is improving the way we assess performance, and we have a sound, trustworthy performance rating, then we can use that trustworthy output to then generate trustworthy recommend AI-powered salary increases. So there's a chain of value there that you need to have the whole chain impacted by AI to improve the data, the quality of data, quality of output, to then make salary decision at the end of it. Same thing for hiring decisions. If we want to make hiring recommendation, we're going to need to be able to improve the way we use AI to evaluate skills, evaluate work experience, evaluate market value, then we can make recommendations. So that's the entire chain of value in HR that's going to be improved and is going to lead to more, I think, improved decisions when it comes to AI recommendation in salary increases.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting. And you wonder that a company that has implemented these things, they will become a competitive employer if you can go to the market and say, this is how we calculate pay, but also how we connect it to your performance going forward. It's not about, sort of you getting together with the hiring manager or whatever it is purely meritocratic. I think that's a very, very strong signal to a competitive market to say, you know what, I want to work with it. So a similar example might be, I mean, Buffer didn't use sort of AI in calculating their salaries, but I do believe their radical transparency approach, and it was no discretion on hiring managers. It was like, okay, here, we're going to calculate it on their website. You can calculate it, and it's like that has got to lead to a lot more attractive, a sort of a pull to candidates that might want to work for a company which, let's face it, only does like scheduling, scheduling for tweets or whatever. It wasn't a particularly interesting company, but the culture that you communicate by saying we have this policy on compensation is very, very compelling, very powerful. So you can imagine this has an EB component. Go ahead, Vision.
40x increase in number of applications Buffer when they started publishing their salary transparency.
Is that right? Wow.
40 times, I think it was. So you're very much right. The third driver, technology compliance, but employer brand, and is going to push some companies to be out there being like, hey, we want to be a fair and equitable employer. And also another stat for you, the perception of fairness and equality for an individual when it comes to compensation is far more motivating and engaging than the actual amount. But if you're getting an increase you don't understand, you're less motivated than if you're actually sure that your package is fair with the market, fair with your peers, and so on. So any employer being out there, we want to be a fair and equitable employer. This is what we're doing to link performance to pay and so on, is going to see a massive attractiveness boost.
Not only this, but again, just speculating further, but you can imagine this being a massive relief for the hiring managers, actually. Because like Arif, you've been a manager, visually you've done it. So obviously complaints about being paid right or wrong, that's a big time commitment that you have to manage that relationship. Well, actually, if you have a system calculating it, that conversation might even go away. It's like, hey, listen, the way in which you can improve your compensation is actually improve your performance. I, as your manager, is going to help coach you to do that. Therefore, I'm your best friend. I'm not the guy who's like stopping you from, buying a new car. My job is to help you improve your performance. That automatically should trigger the compensation you need. So it might lead to a much healthier relationship internally. And again, think about the productivity boost if you don't have that internal wrangling that is always involved in a team-based format. So very, very interesting. Folks, we're coming to the end of this chat. So if you have any questions for our amazing guest, please do take the opportunity to ask the question in the public chat, and we'll get to them towards the end of the show here. Okay, let's take the macro view on this as we sort of have touched and discussed all of these topics and points. Do you see, again, let's keep going radical. What innovations do you anticipate to see in compensation going forward? For instance, I just thought, AI might solve the data and the practical problem of having a very sort of personalized compensation approach, because that was the reason why that stopped, is because it was practically infeasible. It wasn't technically infeasible. It was just too much to do. So AI maybe solved that. What about like tying compensation entirely to revenue, something like this? Like, do you anticipate a company saying, we actually don't know what you're going to be paid? Neither do you. However, based on what we earn this week, you will get a percentage on that, and that's like calculated dynamically today. It could even be like paid in micro payments. Like, forget about having a monthly salary, right? Well, why we pay monthly? This is like a complete legacy approach. Lots of people actually have a problem with monthly pay. It's because I'm sitting on these bills. They need to go out. Why don't we have like dynamic delivery of value based on like revenue of team, revenue of company? What are your thoughts?
Virgil?
Yeah, well, I think on your last point, first of all, I think the space has exploded with like wage on demand. There's more and more wage on demand players out there, and I think it's become a democracy that actually employees can ask for their wage to be paid on a more, I think, daily payments. It's maybe less AI than just laws for financial health and well-being of people, and just technology allowing for people to be paid earlier than the end of the month. So I'll say that's coming in, but I don't see like full pay. The basic thing is, one of the reasons there's been less and less variable pay in most companies overall is that people don't like the unpredictability of it, especially in the current environment, cost of living crisis. We do like to accept a job where we're like, we don't know what you get paid. You might get paid 2,000 this month. You might get paid 12,000. Who would accept that apart from certain few elites? So I in this one, I might have another idea for how it's going to change, but on this one, I don't see huge groundbreaking way there. But maybe Arif, you disagree.
I mean, it needs, like, it's pretty disruptive, I think. Like, it needs time. Like, it is possible, but then we are talking about so many different processes and regulations are like impacting even that monthly pay decision. It's just not a compensation or even a rewards decision. Like, we are talking about finance, sales planning, operations. Like, if we are looking at even just different departments in a company, that will have an impact on that decision is massive. So that is very disruptive way. And I think I am a fan of variable pay. So I think it's a fundamental to pay for performance. But on the other hand, that what we are seeing, especially with this market volatility in the last, let's say, year or so, maybe even a little bit longer, Virgil is right as well. Like, people definitely prefer some sort of a safety net. And it just depends. It goes back to how AI can help, is this whole tailored bonus structures, depending on your lifestyle, maybe where you are, in which stage of life you are, maybe you need different bonus structures, or maybe even also the long-term incentives. So I think one of the questions that I'm seeing on the public chat is like, how much of the AI premium for AI skills is like on base versus variable. So basically splitting this on a very tailored way with the help of AI might be the more, it's the first step towards what you are envisioning, Hank.
That's great. By the way,
one thing on that side is like the question from Stratos and like startups competing with big players. I think I think startups and most startups can't compete with some of the largest players out there, like the OpenAI and others, because the amount of money they're throwing at those people, it's like, it's different stratosphere, right? It's not like, okay, maybe I can increase my machine learning specialist by 10%. No, like they're getting packages, especially in equity or form of equity. OpenAI has a very interesting form of equity, right? It's like 10x or 8x. So you can't compete with, I'm going to give you a bit more equity a bit there. Like this is a entire, we're talking about people who are raising 100, 200, 500 million and whose cash and money goes beyond 99% of companies out there. So I think there's a world, like if you're a startup, I often get this question from some of our clients. We're getting poached by like, let's say Google or like OpenAI and so on. Why can I compete? I said, you can't. Like the reality is you can't. You have to let go.
Yep, they're gonna go. That makes sense. Okay, we have a final question here from. Go ahead, Arif.
Sorry, if really AI is not your core business product or field, basically it will be too much of a cash burn for a startup, also just to pay some sort of, even if it's an equity or base, that kind of a premium. But to this case, I would always kind of prefer to kind of give more weight to the variable or equity, not disrupting the base salaries that much.
Yeah, and I think there'll always be, again, this lends to people who have different attitudes to risk, let's say, or and again, you actually might sort of lead to some other problems that way. If you were super personalized, for instance, you may end up having kind of really strange distribution of where the salaries or the compensation goes from a demographic perspective, for instance. So those things could be an issue. Okay, it looks like a poll's been set up. So folks who are still here, please do look at the poll. In fact, there's two of them here. Oh, there's loads of polls. Crikey, I must have missed all this. Folks, go and vote on the poll. Have you implemented AI in your compensation practices? The choices are yes, you already implemented, no, but you're considering it, and no plans to implement. Go and check that out. Okay, Ula has got a question, so let's go to that real quick. I think you can add to stream. That was quite a cool feature. Is that what I should do? Yeah, there we go. Okay, folks, everyone can read this. What about comp philosophy which does not link salary to performance? Performance is oriented in development rather than more productivity. So, yeah, I mean, I guess so. We're kind of moving down a road where performance is, we like to think that's the right thing, but again, we have a measurement problem with performance. Lots of jobs, it's very hard to understand what performance is. I mean, sales may be obvious. Here's a bunch of numbers. You got to go and do that. Recruitment, even here's a bunch of headcount. I mean, again, this drives sometimes negative behaviors. But what if you're you're an engineer in a group of other engineers? How do I know you're actually performing positively in that? I mean, how do I even, separate your performance from the person next to you? Very difficult to do. Inherently team-based. So, any thoughts on this? How does AI? Can AI help be more accurate with measuring performance, or should we, decouple comp from performance altogether and have a different way to pay? No.
No, I have a strong stance on that. If I can, I linked an article that on how AI will improve performance management, and therefore I strongly believe that's the way to go. But I to Ula's point, I think I like the philosophies that some companies, I like philosophy are like, I'm gonna pay reviews are based on development, and like variable pay is based on performance, which is a view. But you get back to the topic of data in, data out, right? If you want to pay for development, then you need to like analyze development. How can AI improve the ability to track the development of an individual, right? And it's super hard. And I've been hearing for 15 years, skills management is tomorrow. You list the skills for a role, you evaluate someone on those skills, then I've never seen it work live. I've seen thousands of companies try it. I don't know one company who's managed to do it. Maybe AI will improve the ability to track skill evaluation and then track development, because development in a way is like developing your skills, and therefore enable you to pay as per developing skills development. I hope that's the case. I haven't seen it, but I hope that's the case.
It's going to be very interesting. Go ahead, Arif.
I think people need to understand one key thing is compensation is actually an outcome. So it's an outcome of performance management, talent management, and in that case, we also mentioned about the whole biases and performance evaluation and all that stuff could also actually create a bias even in the AI if you want to use in compensation. It's the same thing. Like basically, if you can assess the performance or the quality of this, development or so, or the productivity, if you can track it somehow, if you already have solid KPIs and the data on it, I will say yes. So, and to be honest, I think base salary not being linked to performance or so is not something that companies didn't think of it. Like, especially with this new pay transparency, pay equity directives and regulations, I think we are going towards there, and the whole pay for performance is going on variable pay. But for that, again, you just need really good KPIs, quantifiable, and again, you need to get quality data, collect them, and assess them in a very unbiased and fair way.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Folks, this has been one of the most stimulating conversations I've had all year. I could really speak to you guys for a lot longer, but we are coming to the end of time, folks, because we are all prisoners of the calendar, and all events have to end at 60 minutes. Everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. We're going to continue with this series. We're going to be talking about salary transparency in next month. I believe it is next month. So make sure, I think Megan will send everyone an invite to this. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please do register for the third show on this series. That's about it from us. Arif Ender, wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining and sharing your insights with us. Virgil, great to see you as well, man. Let's reconnect when we do the next one. Everybody else, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.